I was born in France,
Yeah.
and so I came here to this beautiful country when I was quite young. So my father was a journalist in France, and my mother, he met my mother she's Costa Rican, so at some point the family moved here. I am a physicist, and I did much of my graduate studies in France. And then I went, as everybody else, to the US, East Coast, West Coast. And then I was really worried about continuing my research if I went back to Costa Rica. But at that time, I started to use the BidNet, the internet. That was in the late 80s, and that was at Stanford University at CR.NIC. And then it was clear that this was the way to go, and such powerful instruments for research. At that time, the internet was essentially for research. And we thought that was our toy. And it was impossible to imagine that at some point it was going to change humanity. One of the big instruments to really change and allow, I mean, such empowering force for everybody. Anyhow, so I was at that point with a Guggenheim Fellowship at CR.NIC, and I thought that if I could work for, let's say, 6 months into this and connect the University of Costa Rica, and by that way the country, then I could go back to continue my research. And that didn't happen, of course. It happened that we connected not in 6 months, but in 9 months to the BidNet. But then it was so successful that I started to receive grants and here and there. So I spent the next 12 years of my life fully dedicated to this. Then came the internet, then the National Research Network, etc. So it took me 12 years. So one of the best experiences in my life. Not being able to continue doing research. I mean, the worst thing that for science is isolation. And that was it. I mean, if you could have an internet connectivity, good internet connectivity, you could do frontier science wherever you are. So the importance of that, the leverage for small countries is even bigger than for big countries. So that was it. I mean, I was going to spend whatever energy or whatever work would require to put that into works. So we started with BidNet, and there are reasons for that. At the university, we had this 4381. We have 2 of them. So we have the terminals, we have the knowledge for that. And that was also the natural way to go, because the links, the capacity of the links, were not that demanding as for internet. So this first link was a 19.2 kbps, imagine. And that was the thing we could afford at that time. And here you had an instrument which would change your life. So this is an amazing thing, yes. NSF was keen into providing and helping those connections. So NSF played a very important role at that point. This is something important. And at that time, the internet was NSFnet, essentially. It was not commercial internet, it was really scientific. And I think I recall Steve Golsen was one of the key people for that. So early on, there was a meeting in Rio in 1992. Because the main issue at that time was the connectivity. The only satellite system at that point was Intelsat, and that was government owned. And we had the amazing chance that at that point, Pan and Sat launched a digital satellite, and they wanted to do new things. And so I met this wonderful engineer, Brian Morgan, which ended up being the head of the company, but at the time he was a bright engineer. And so circumstance, it plays a role as well. And then Steve Goldstein came with this fantastic idea of establishing a point of presence in Homestead, Florida, with PanamSat, a pass-through satellite. So the idea is that you would have south-south communication going through this hub in Florida without entering the US. And then NSF paid for connectivity between this point of presence and the US NSF-net backbone. So this was a very important point in establishing the connectivity, the first connectivity in Latin America. Of course, at that time there was no fiber or whatever. And I think that PanamSat played a key role because it was a small company, was one of the first to launch digital satellites, and etc. So this was a very important point in the development. And then, of course, came the project of Saul Hahn at the OAS, the Organization of American States. It was not, he has a grant, which was not that big, but enough to provide basic equipment, which was going to be sent to the different countries. And then a group of engineers will go and work there. So his efforts went through all Latin America. In this region, basically my team of engineers at the University of Costa Rica worked very closely for that region, so the equipment will be sent to Panama, Honduras, Salvador, wherever. And then we will spend 5 days or something like that installing the basic equipment and working, training the local engineers and colleagues. And so that was a very good element in establishing the internet in Latin America. Well, we have these 12 nodes across the university, basically by equipment which was given by the professors. And we have a Cisco IGS router, which was lended by Larry Landweber. So all this was very, very... So we have this first connection, and that was the start of the internet in this country. And at the same time, we did have a land connection, first to Nicaragua and then to Panama. So that were the first IP connections, direct connections between three Latin American countries. So at the start, Panama and Nicaragua were using our high capacity link, which was 64 kbps. To get the funds for the first year of paying PanamSat for BitNet, or 19.2 kilobit per second, this turned out to be very difficult because nobody will be willing to give money. So eventually, that money came from CONICET. What happened is that CONICET had this grant for establishing a network, some information centers. And this was paid by the Inter-American Development Bank, and they have no idea at all what the internet was about. So they were in this model where you were going to have several information centers. So you will come one day to one of them, say, well, look, I'm interested in that and that. So the gentleman will say, well, very good, sign here, please come in a week and we will have for you the information ready and whatever. Nonetheless, we didn't criticize the system, what they were doing, but we just asked for a little money. And they gave us $40,000 from an extra they have for paper, buying paper and things like that. So just nothing. But we just needed to pay for 1 year. Only that. Only that. The idea is if we can show the power of this in a year, you are going to finance the thing. And that's what happened. Second year was paid by the University of Costa Rica and other people. Eventually, we obtained a grant from the USAID. This grant was essentially for 3 or 4 routers, plus 1 year of connectivity. But it proved to be crucial. And we also have a grant from IBM who gave us our first, it was a RISC computer to have the DNS and things like that. We call this a backbone on a table. Yeah, so essentially we learn how to do routing there. So we have the terminals, the routers, so we could send packets from one to the other. And also we learn which were the best routing protocols, OSPF or this or that, BGP. So we really started from zero. And those engineers, and they were superb engineers. Then we just took the routers, take them with us, and put one here in this province, the other here, the other there. And we have this IP network running, and that network stood for 8 to 10 years before going to the next project, which was extending that model to the country, and not only to universities, whatever. And this was done basically when the state utility, energy and phone company, ICE, took this project, and we worked together in establishing broadband connectivity. It took us 10 years to go from the backbone on a table to a backbone in a country, let's put it that way. But the principles are the same, the technologies are roughly the same, etc. We knew that at the end it was not our job to run networks. And this is a mistake that some people and some organizations have gone through. This is my network, etc. No, this was always conceived as a national project. But we could not let things go into the wrong directions. We have to make sure that a very serious institution like ICE, which is really very compromised with the national development, will take this project, and then we will work together and do this in a very large scale. We worked very hard for that many years, and we wanted this to be in good hands. We were so convinced of the power of these instruments that once you start, you cannot go back. The difficult point is to start. So we did the same thing with the internet, and we had this grant, which we compete for international projects across the world, and we won. It was something like $100,000. It was not that much. However, it would pay again for a year or so of higher connectivity. It was 64 kbps. But we did exactly the same thing. But this time, we connected other institutions. So we started with the CRNet project, and that was the first IP network in the country. So eventually, we had something like 20 institutions to share the costs. So this was a routed network, really state-of-the-art for that time. And so CRNet played a very important role in establishing not only the internet, but introducing the internet working technologies at large scale in the country and the region. For establishing this ICE project, the ministry, when I was there, obtained a grant of $1 million in equipment to have a pilot project to bring this ADSL to every university, every important industry in the country, the press, all the influential people in the country, So there was not to be way back. It's the same idea. So everybody was enticed, and then when problems came, of course they are always there. The press, the government, the university defended the project, and that's how it survived. Because you have to, at some point, to fight huge interests from big phone companies and etc., which always happens. But it was the same principle. I had a different view from the Clara engineers. I was part of Clara, but I have a different view on how to build this network. I do consider that the models in the internet should be more participative. Let me put it. Let me try to explain. This network is really too centrally operated, and the model I was and my engineers we were pushing was different. The idea was to establish GIGs, which mean global internet exchange points, and that goes within the geography. For example, here in this Caribbean region, you have this Arcos, it was called Arcos at that time, fiber ring, which connected Florida, Dominican Republic, Colombia, all of Central America, Mexico. So that was a natural network, natural. So the idea we proposed at that time, okay, look, if we have capacity into this ring, to this Atlantic ring, we don't need to have connectivity to the rest of the world. It's there because it touches Florida. And then we can have a global internet exchange point to connect to South America, etc. So that was much less expensive. Because at this point, for example, we have to pay for the connectivity of people in the south that have to go through Europe. I mean, I thought that the model we were proposing was a better model. The thing that happened is that there was this privatization law at that time that was really not accepted at large. But then we have this problem that there was not opening of the telecom and nothing in view for the next 10 years or so. So that was very serious. So government decided to take person which was not in politics and which was outside these conflicts. And I was at the time director of the computer center at the University of Costa Rica. So they took me for this ministry. And so we started a fantastic project, I think, in the sense that ICE has an amazing fiber infrastructure across the country. And since the 80s, it has one of the best phone systems in Latin America. That means copper all across, and with big capillarity. So you have a copper network and you have a fiber network. What would you do with that? Well, simple. So you have routers for the traffic, redirecting the traffic to go across the network, across the fiber, and then you have to power the the copper with DSL. It was a really inexpensive project. The price tag of that was $20 million for the routers and $20 million for the DSL, which at national scale is nothing. So then we started with this pilot project again, nobody will give you a cent, ever, unless they see the thing is working. So we convinced, in this case, Cisco Corporation to give us this grant to show that this could work. And in 2 weeks, this project was running in 2001. However, the large-scale deployment took 5 years because there were powerful interest against. But eventually, the project went through, and now we have this great connectivity throughout the country, which is fantastic. So then it was time to go back to my own business. So I decided to go back to physics. So I wrote to my colleagues, and I started doing physics again. But now using this fantastic instrument. So that was it essentially. We were starting with the National Academy of Sciences, which was neutral, transparent, with any particular interest, whatever. So we asked that the CR domain would go to the National Academy of Sciences, and that has worked extremely well. And some of those excellent engineers who were working on connectivity, routing, etc., now work for this project, which is amazing. And now we're going to also follow this idea of transparency and accountability, whatever, have the Internet exchange point there. So, and everybody agrees on that. NSRC have played a very good role because it has always been very focused on what is important at a given moment. Let me give an example of, well, first I think this was started by Randy Bush. And of course, Randy was a superb, and he's still a superb engineer. And he knows that you must do things. Not talk too much about things, but do things. So from the start, what have guided NSRC is learning by doing, hands-on. Probably NSRC started from the bottom. How to connect Peru, that was Randy's project. How to connect Peru, then how to do routing, etc., etc. But then you are feeling the next steps. So this is how an organization which is sound as NSRC evolves, without, of course, leaving the others which are lagging behind, etc. So it's always evolving field, of course. Mm-hmm. It was a great moment, and I enjoy so much working with all these great engineers. And by the way, people give me too much credit on that. I mean, it was really a team work. I mean, the Internet is a collaborative effort, of course. What this is about is working together and convincing other people. And science is more universal than ever at this point.
So you're uniquely placed as both a researcher and, whether you like the word or not, the father of the Internet in Costa Rica.
Now I'm the proud grandfather. Yeah.